Good afternoon, everybody. Week 11 of our lockdown, although it's definitely easing for some, controversially, with many of the schools going back and parents making the difficult decision as to whether that's the right thing to do or not, and just waiting to see how the dust settles, I guess. So quite a poignant week in our first week of June and our first week back after half term. So I thought with all of this turmoil, we've got global turmoil, all sorts of horrible riots and things going on as well. I thought we needed perhaps have a fairly chilled concert. It also comes a week after half term for me, where the majority of which I've been doing gardening, which isn't great for doing powerful, fast stuff on the piano. Fingers a little bit more like sausages rather than actual concert pianist fingers. So we're going for a slightly more chilled approach. I've got some beautiful pieces to play, and as you know, we've had so many gorgeous evenings over the lockdown where the sun has just been gently setting and quietly sort of finishing and closing the troubles and the turmoils of the day. So I thought maybe some nocturnes and some night pieces just to reflect those moments, to have a bit of time to just sit and have a little bit of time to reflect over the good things, the bad things, some of the ugly things, all the exciting things that have happened, so much change, and a way of reflection before moving forward. So a nocturne, what is a nocturne? A nocturne literally meaning a night piece, and has its roots very much taken from the second movements of Beethoven and Mozart sonatas, this idea of a long lyrical line with a accompaniment underneath, bubbling in some cases underneath, but sustaining a very long line. Hard to do on the piano, as we know, because as soon as we play a note, the sound suddenly just dies. So if we're trying to sustain a long line, all of my students will know how much I go on about listening to the sound decay of the one note to prepare for the next note. And I think with these long nocturnes and these long melodic lines that you get in these lyrical pieces, it's one of the hardest things to do on the piano. So we can really be listening out for that. So interestingly, people think that Chopin was the first man to write nocturnes, but the style had evolved a little bit before that. So I wanted to play you some of John Field's a nocturne by him in A. John Field was born in Dublin in 1782, and this nocturne comes from the year 1817. He wrote a set of nocturnes. He started off in Dublin, then he had lessons in London with Clementi, and then him and Clementi travelled around Europe, and he ended up teaching and studying and teaching and staying in St. Petersburg for 20 years, eventually ending up in Moscow, and that's where he was laid to rest. But these very early nocturnes that we hear, he really set the scene for what that style was going to evolve into. So it's a ternary form, so ABA, you have a tune at the beginning, new tune in the middle, tune back at the end. And most of Chopin nocturnes are modelled on this idea. You have a moving left-hand accompaniment which helps to project and helps to carry that right-hand line. So if you hear the opening of this Field nocturne, you'll hear that going on. So there's great freedom in the right hand to move around the left hand. The left hand is the anchor point with it all, and holding the rhythm and holding it tight. And then the right hand can just have rubato, be free, and have that expression to show where the phrases are going each time. So that's our first nocturne of the day. Our second piece, we had to put a piece of Schumann in, and this piece of Schumann comes from the Fantasy Stücke, Opus 12, and this is where Schumann shows his one of his first outpourings of the two characters which went all the way through his musical life, Florestan and Eusebius. And he really gives a glimpse into that slightly bipolar, split personality mentality, which was then later to plague him and actually become one of the things to end his life. So you see this right from the beginning. This piece, written in 1837, comes from a set of pieces which were taking their influence from the writings of E.T.A. Hoffmann in 1814. And right back in the beginning of Schumann's career, he wasn't sure whether he was going to be a musician or a writer, so he was very much influenced by the writings and the poets of the day. And another thing that really you can hear in the Schumann piece is the way that he likes to do cross rhythms, and that's something that comes all the way through his pieces. One of the more famous ones is in Schumann's Piano Concerto, where he totally displaces the beat. All of that sort of stuff, and then it comes again a bit later. And anyone that's ever played that with orchestra knows you've got to be so careful to make sure that the beat feels in the right place. Otherwise it can go a little bit catastrophically wrong. But in Des Abends, a piece about the evening, and as Schumann described it, a gentle picture of dusk. Des Abends, it's just a gentle scene. It very much explores the character of Eusebius, this dreamer, this man dreaming about his day, and is very calm and very gentle. Just gently flows along. But in the left hand, we've got, it's written in 2/8, and we've got a sort of a gentle rocking rhythm that we've got. A triplet thing that's very much feeling in 2, and the right hand feels as if it's in 3. The trick that Schumann then does is combine those two to make it melt together, so the listeners even slightly more at sea because they can't quite hear what those rhythms are doing. So it's that juxtaposition of two different rhythms going on. And that idea of the dream of the Eusebius. The second piece, which I'm not going to play, but just to give you a little bit of an idea, he really goes straight in with the Florestan, this flamboyant, passionate side of him. Very famous the Aufschwung, the soaring that you get with the Florestan, the Eusebius characters. So a little bit of that split personality going on in Schumann's night piece, his evening piece. And I guess we can't do a programme of nocturnes without Monsieur Chopin adding to it his Chopin D-flat major. We've heard lots of compositions by Chopin on either C-sharp minor or D-flat minor. It obviously sort of perhaps resonates with me or him. I'm not sure which way around it is. But this is one of my favourite nocturnes. I absolutely adore all of the nocturnes anyway, but this is one of my favourite. It really epitomises that long line going over the top. It's through composed, so we just get this gentle progression of ideas all the way through. three fairly gentle pieces, our Nocturne and Night pieces, starting in 1817 with our Field Nocturne. Interestingly, 1817, Schubert was frantically writing the string quartet, The Death and the Maiden. Beethoven was starting to get into those late piano sonatas that we talked about before. And then it goes straight over to Schumann in 1837. And interestingly, that Chopin Nocturne was written in 1836 and published in 1837. So starting to get a picture of how things are piecing together with the different ideas of form and nationalism, romanticism, programmatic music that you get in this romantic period. So very much hope you enjoy the Nocturne and Night Pieces concert. And to start with, we have the Field Nocturne in A. programme of nocturnes and night pieces in a very relaxed mood one way or another. Next week will be week 12 of the concerts, the last one that we're going to do in the basement. The channel will stay open so that we might be putting on concerts. All's very up in the air, as I'm sure you can imagine. But certainly the lockdown concert series, there'll be 12 of these concerts for you to have a look at, and just going to be playing a sort of slightly random selection of piano classics, whatever that might include. So that will be our last one in the basement at this point in the lockdown. So thank you very much for supporting all of these concerts, and look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you very much. Bye bye.